Hello, everybody. Many of you here today are involved in the design and management of parking garages, and as you know, that's a major investment, and you want those garages to last as long as possible, and so from time to time you have to go through the renovation process, and we can learn a lot from those who have been through that process. So today we have a panel to talk about the renovation of the Fort Duquesne and 6th parking garage. And our speakers today are going to be Christopher Holt, who is the Director of Parking with the Pittsburgh Parking Authority, Matt Rapaski, Associate VP of Desman Associates, Joe White, President of Carl Walker Construction, and Bernie Gray with Gray Welding and Fabrication Services.
Thank you. I want to give you an overview of the facility and the significant role it plays in downtown Pittsburgh. But first, I want to acknowledge the team members involved in this project. We have David Honorado, Executive Director of the Parking Authority, myself, Christopher Holt, Director of Project Management, and Christopher Spears, the Director of Parking Services. Our design team is with Desman Design Management. That was under the watch of Matthew Paskey, a project manager and a structural engineer, and Carl Walker Construction Group under the guidance of Joe White, President Carl Walker. About the site. The parking garage, Fort Duquesne 6, is located 126th Street in the Cultural District of downtown Pittsburgh. It's a 920 space parking garage, 8 levels, for a total of 400,000 total square feet. The garage is situated along the Allegheny River with direct access via the 6th Street Bridge to PNC Park, Hinesville Stadiums, all located in the North Shore Business District. Site plan. The area, you see the garage highlighted in the dotted line circle. It's yellow. And the facility is logistically located in the Cultural District area with direct access to 3 historical bridges, the 6th Street, 7th Street, and 9th Street bridges, which all lead to the North Shore Business District. Other points of walking distance from the garage include Point State Park. About the site. Garage was built, the first phase, garage was built in 1959. In 1967, the second phase was implemented by constructing a horizontally expanded garage on parcels of property obtained by the authority, thus expanding the overall footprint of the garage to 400,000 square feet. Here we have virtual renderings of the garage. I don't think you can see that too well, but this is the expansion portion of the garage, which was implemented on those parcels of property. The second one is the part of the first phase garage, which shows the metal panels that were implemented and painted and installed. Challenges. Due to construction activities, parking was limited to 75% capacity for the duration of the project, which lasted approximately two years. Leaseholders were accommodated with parking spaces throughout rolling floor closures within the facility. Event parking proved challenging as space closures to capture sports fans and theater enthusiasts had to be planned, coordinated with garage management well in advance of scheduled dates. The Renaissance Hotel valet parking was continuously maintained by a dedicated parking area in the basement level of the expansion garage. Street-level commercial retail within the garage was particularly impacted as protective scaffolding was placed over the entrances to the businesses, causing some marketing challenges of drawing customers to eat and shop. Noise factors were relevant and closely monitored during evening hours. So you can imagine as the project progress of the garage was going, we always had to monitor noise factors, maintain public safety, which is a continual challenge 5 days a week. And then obviously the surrounding businesses were concerned with the noise factor and just trying to maintain some sensibility of business culture. Our downtown partners, the Cultural District. The Cultural District is epicenter for downtown Pittsburgh dynamic arts and entertainment scene. The district area encompasses 14 square blocks of theaters, art galleries, restaurants, and diverse retail stores. The Cultural District played a supporting role on improving the structural integrity and appearance of the facility. The Riverwalk, located along the Allegheny River Passage trails, the garage provided parking patrons a pedestrian link via stair tower leading from the Clementi Bridge to the trail that parallels 10th Street bypass in Allegheny River. Planning Commission. This was an intricate part of the exterior facade improvements of the garage. We had to present our updates, modernization of this facade by submitting an application to the Plans and Planning Commission, who they had reviewed and had approval authority over major development proposals and redevelopment plans. The exterior facade improvements of the garage needed community support and as one of the requirements on meeting the Commission's criteria in the approval process. So you can imagine that if any kind of development in the business district, there's a due process with the City Planning Commission that has to meet particular criteria guidelines. And once we receive that approval, we were able to move forward with fabricating the exterior facade. And Matt will pass me into more details about that portion of the work. Renaissance Hotel. Maintaining contract relationship with the hotel for valet parking was an important factor to provide parking for the hotel patrons. So Parking Authority established a contract relationship with the hotel, which enabled them to provide valet parking in our garage in that way to keep their business viable. Equal Opportunity Review Commission, EORC. This was a very important component of our contractual package that we have with Carl Walker. The commission, they would review and approve all applicable construction contracts for compliance with City of Pittsburgh and Parking Authority policies regarding women and minority business opportunities for projects in excess of $250,000. The authority maintains goals of 25% minority and 10% women participation respectively, and encourages contractors on their due diligence on obtaining these goals. Carl Walker Construction maintained 12% minority participation and 5% participation, women participation, and overall skilled labor payroll minority participation 4%. These goals can sometimes be tricky to obtain, especially here in Pittsburgh, and trying to find qualified, bona fide minority contractors is in the skilled labor force. As general contracts can be a tricky thing. There's challenges they have to meet, and so we try to work with them, attaining work with general contractors. And I'm going to turn it over to Matt Pasky on the challenges of the project. Thank you.
All right, now for the interesting stuff, engineering. I'm not going to get into the nuts and bolts of things. I'm going to try to keep it a real high level here. I don't want to bore everyone with the intricate details and the engineering that went behind all this, but it was a challenging project for us. The job actually started in 2017 and ran about 2 years. And it was approximately $8.5 million job. So it was a big project. And pretty much, again, we were involved with all the repair and renovation, the architectural portion as well. The garage, as Chris mentioned, was built in 1955. The original section was built in 1955. And it was pretty much a cast-in-place, conventional reinforced structure. Slab, beam, column, short spans, flat slab. Very little went on in that section of the garage. It was in pretty good condition. The horizontal expansion that was put on in 1967, it was a hodgepodge of structural elements. It consisted of a cast-in-place button-head post-tension slab that was supported by a precast single T that were supported by steel columns. So it had precast, it had cast-placed concrete, and it also had structural steel. Something you really don't see a lot, and very unique structural system. And I mean, I've seen a lot of different structural systems, and it's definitely a unique system. So before we got into things, we decided we were going to do some exploratory openings and just make sure things are what they're supposed to be. And really, with the steel framing elements, the steel framing elements were encased in a fireproofing material or a board. And we weren't real sure what was going on with those columns. So there were some areas where the boarding was breached, so we were able to inspect the columns. And other locations, we did some exploratory openings to check out the structural steel. For the most part, it looked pretty good, but we wanted to rip all that stuff off and make sure that we had complete exposure moving forward. So what we ended up doing was taking all that fireproofing off and doing a full inspection on the steel and supplementing the steel columns. Again, they were pretty good shape for the most part. And instead of putting like a spray-on fireproofing, they had to be re-fireproofed. Instead of putting like a spray-on fireproofing or encasing them in a fireproofing material, we looked at some other options, and what we ended up, it was a little bit of a challenge, and we ended up looking at an intumescent paint, which is really nice. It just looks like a paint, and you really can't tell it's fireproofing, but it's a little expensive, but it's very aesthetic looking and pleasing looking, and columns were all street facing, so we wanted to make sure that we don't want a fireproof column facing the street. It wouldn't look very good. So that was definitely an aspect or a challenge in the project. And the floor slab repairs and the horizontal expansion. After we did these exploratory openings in the floor slab, we found the buttonhead system, which is like the earliest type of post-tensioning system out there. No longer used, thankfully, but probably stopped using that in the late 60s. You might see some in the 70s, but it probably shouldn't. They probably should not have used it because it's just not a very good system. But the unique aspect of this was usually the post-tensioning systems are unbonded in the slab. And in this instance, what we found, and buttonheads can be fixed if they're unbonded, what we found was that it was actually it was actually run through a metal tube, and then those metal tubes were grouted. And the problem is when you grout those tubes, it doesn't always fill the tubes up entirely. And so there's pockets throughout the whole length of the tube. And over time, I mean, 50 years of garage, it's over 50 years old now, but over a 50-year span, water gets down there, salts, corrodes the metal tubing, gets into the actual pockets, and then just starts running everywhere, and eventually getting to the actual post-tensioning cables. And what we found was that the post-tensioning system was basically completely compromised. There was nothing left. Luckily, they had some mild reinforcing steel. It's surprising sometimes how these garages stand when you start digging into them. It's like, this thing really shouldn't be standing, or there should be some significant cracking somewhere, but you just don't see it. And in this instance, we really didn't see anything that would indicate that. So thankfully, we did a lot of these exploratory openings because I think initially we were looking at it being an unbonded PT system. I'm trying not to get too far in the weeds on that. But again, so we had a couple options. Option one was basically to remove the entire topping slab throughout the garage and replace it with a new PT slab. And obviously, that would be very expensive. There wasn't a lot of concrete repairs in that slab because there's not a lot of reinforcing steel in it. But what was there had been compromised, the main post-tensioning system. So, we'd be tearing out a lot of good concrete to repair, it, and it just didn't seem to make sense. So we started looking at the possibility of externally reinforcing it with like carbon fiber reinforcement. That also has its limitations on how much load it can carry, and there's other issues with it. So we kind of steered away from that because we have negative bending is a problem with carbon fiber. You have to put it on the top surface, and that would be the drive surface. So we really didn't want to do that. It's really not recommended. So we kind of moved away from that. So we had really one other option. We started looking at the mild reinforcing steel in the actual slab itself, and we're going to utilize that or try to utilize that as our primary reinforcing. And luckily, we were able to do that, but what we had to do was shorten the span. So we ended up putting in a structural steel frame in this garage and attaching it to the single T's, and that worked. And it was probably the most economical way of going about the project. And what we did also with the intumescent, with the structural steel framing that we put in there, is we put an intumescent coating on that as well from a fireproofing standpoint. Everything had to be fireproofed. that was the reason why we went with the intumescent there as opposed to a spray-on was because there's clearance issues in that garage, head clearance issues. We already had some issues we were dealing with from a head clearance standpoint. Putting steel in there and then fireproofing and adding another 1.5 to 2 inches onto that would obviously change the clearances in the garage, and we didn't want to do that, so we went with an intumescent paint. Again, a little bit more expensive, but we didn't have to compromise any head clearance issues within the garage. The Helix Ramp, really, it's a double Helix ramp in there, which is pretty cool. And that's a picture of the Helix right there. We did repairs in it, pretty straightforward. The problem with the Helix is, we want to minimize. It's an exit ramp as well. It's solely used as the exit to the garage, and we didn't want to shut that down because then we'd have to reverse traffic through the parking garage, which would have been a big problem. So what we ended up doing is we looked at using fast set materials and doing all the work off hours on weekends, just low volume times. And sometimes we actually were able to shut the garage down on occasion, but that's essentially how we handled doing repairs to the Helix ramps. Stair towers, again, nothing really eye-opening in the stair towers, except again, they're a means of egress and a point of entry for all your pedestrian traffic. So we try to minimize shutdowns in those stair towers as well. So again, we go back to using fast set materials. They were metal panned with concrete infills, so we had a lot of the stuff prefabricated before we shut the stair towers down. They came in, tore everything out, put it in, and we tried to turn those around as quickly as possible. And then the facade, that was probably the most challenging portion of the project. The 1959 section has L panels. They're made out of aluminum. They were in pretty good shape. The framing, the connections to the structure were all in good shape. They were just, they needed freshened up. So we decided to take those off, have those all finished and repainted with a high-performance paint system. On the new section of the garage, I call it new, but it's 1967. The exchange, I did that all the time during the project too. I always call it the new garage. It's 1967. But anyways, in that horizontal expansion, 1960, it had aluminum rectangular panels that were attached to a steel frame that was attached to the parking structure. And prior to going out to bid, we inspected the whole facade and determined that there was issues with the connection points of the steel framing, as well as the panel connections to the actual framing. The framing was corroded. The panels were in okay shape. We were initially thinking, well, we'll just refurbish those panels. We'll pull them all off, refurbish them, and then we'll put a brand new steel frame up there. And I'll talk a little bit about that here, because there's an architectural component I'd like to intertwine with that. Waterproofing, pretty straightforward. I mean, we did an elastomeric traffic-bearing waterproofing membrane all throughout the garage. And expansion joints were all replaced. Vertical and overhead repairs were done. Vertical and overhead coatings were installed. And again, architecturally, they were all reflective coatings, so we really increased the light levels within the parking garage. It really, at night when you go by that garage, it just shines, especially with the new LED lighting in there as well. That was included as part of the project. All new signage. Signage was very complex. The garage was built in such a way, it's somewhat complicated to go in that garage, especially if you're parking in the older section of the garage and trying to get to the elevators. The signage was not very good, so we ended up doing an entire signage package on it. And then we addressed all the code compliance issues within the garage, which included your vehicle barrier systems, which we brought them all up to current IBC code or code requirements. By either increasing wall heights, reinforcing those walls accordingly. We also addressed all pedestrian guards. Today it's 42 inches. You got to be 42 inches high, nothing less than a 4-inch diameter sphere. Almost a lot of the garages you'd be surprised you go into don't meet that requirement. You might want to take a look at your garages, because again, you're probably not going to win you're not going to win that case in court especially if you identify it as being an issue from a guard standpoint. From a liability standpoint, you really want to make sure that you have a garage, and that's considered a life safety issue in our opinion. So we addressed all the guard issues and made sure that they were all up to current code requirements. ADA is another item that we addressed. All ramping, all the parking stalls, all the paths of travel. We made sure all that's in the signage as well. It was all ADA compliant, and it also met the 2% requirement that's required by the current ADA code. Now back to the facade. As I mentioned, we had problems with the support frame connection to the building. The support frame itself was also in bad shape, and the panels were in okay shape. So again, we were thinking, well, maybe we'll refurbish it. We'll take all those panels off. Again, the problem with taking them off and putting them back on exactly the same way is we had to create a log, and that was the contractor. It was Joe White. Those guys had to create a log as where that panel was located, and you had over 1,000 of these panels on 2 different faces. So that became complex, and as they began to pull these panels off, they started falling apart. They're 50 years old. It's like anything, you got an old house, you start taking doors off or something, they never go back the way you want them to go back. So, we started looking at it, it's like 50% of these panels are going to have to be replaced. And we're like, well, maybe the best thing to do is not refurbish. Maybe we'll just replace the panels. Or we'll replace it with a brand new facade. So we started going down that road, replace it in kind versus a redesign. And the redesign options that we were looking at were, obviously we've given a modern look to the parking garage, which is a nice, something that this is what we came up with. Whoops, what did I do there, Don? There we are. Yeah, this is kind of one of the renderings we came up with. They're all perforated aluminum panels. We have some monument sign right there at the corner of 4th Duquesne and 6th. We also have, which matches the glazing around the 2 stair towers. So we tried to blend everything together, kind of freshen up everything. And it almost kind of goes, PNC, not PNC, but PPG Place. It kind of fits in with PPG Place. I mean, I know it's several blocks away, but it does, kind of have that reflection of that, and it's a reflection of the city itself. We're using aluminum, steel, so on and so forth. So we were really excited about this opportunity and to be able to refresh this garage and make it look, brand new essentially. But as we went down that path, it just became more complex and more complex, cost-wise. Cultural district was, not really happy with it. They wanted to try. Yes, Larry.
Matt, did Desman do the facade design, or was that another architect?
We worked with a local architect in conjunction with him. Yeah, we did. Yeah. But then the renderings kind of shows a couple different views within the garage at the corner of 4th Duquesne and 6th. And actually, from the North Shore looking in, you can see the Fort Duquesne garage right there. Yeah, that's the garage right there. And this is the 6th Street Bridge right here. So we'll be standing on the North Shore, kind of looking at PNC Park. Actually, you can see the garage from certain locations from PNC Park. So again, we were getting a lot of kickback from this, and there was also cost implications. So we decided that it was probably best to replace it in kind. And the advantage of doing something like that is it definitely has a distinct architectural style to it from the 1960s. I know, people think that style might be ugly or outdated, but it does preserve definitely a definitive type of architectural style that you really don't see a lot anymore. I mean, a lot of these buildings were torn down. And just, they're not, it's not a popular look or, an in look at this point. But that's the road we went down. We replaced every one of those panels. Over 1,000 panels were replaced here locally by a Gray Welding who was not with us. They actually fabbed every one of those panels, painted every one of those panels. And we actually, due to the fact that we started tearing off that facade kind of prematurely, we had to kind of go off of photographs to kind of replicate what was there at one point. And we did a pretty good job. Actually, the pattern.
Did you refurbish the existing ones, or did you purchase them?
We replaced them. We basically threw out all those old panels, those aluminum panels, and replaced every one with a new aluminum panel. All the framing behind it was also replaced as well. And the nice thing about the old facade was actually, there was like lattice work in between each of the panels, and they weren't individually supported by a frame. Every maybe third or fourth panel was actually supported, and then this lattice work that went in between them provided the additional support to the remaining surrounding panels. What we did, the framing that we installed, we support every panel is individually supported now. So that definitely is going to, lets everybody kind of sleep at night. And then we replaced every LED panel in there. Well, they were actually, I believe, they're a fluorescent panel. I think was it a fluorescent light?
Right.
That's what the original lit panels were in the garage. They were a lit panel. Now we went back to a LED light fixture, and those panels were actually fabbed by burning as well, gray welding. All the conduit was replaced, and we went with a high-performance paint system as well on all of the panels.
Cost per project for the project?
It was $8.5 million, start to finish, about 2 years.
Did you get any grants for using LED?
I don't know, Chris.
No, we didn't, but we realized the cost savings from switching to LED. We realized that like a 40% savings on energy usage.
So that kind of gives you a perspective. That's probably at the corner of Penn Avenue and 6th Street. Yeah, I think so. This is the old section of the garage here, the original, and then down the street here, that's the expansion portion of the garage. We added some security screens at the lower levels here as well, some hand railing up here for fall protection. And then all these are those L panels I was referring to. Every one of those was taken off-site, cleaned and repainted, and then reinstalled. And then some more, just a few more. That's pretty much it for the rest of the portion. I'll turn it over to the Irishman. This is your wife. Thanks.
Challenges. We had a lot of challenges on this project. Carl Walker Construction is based in Pittsburgh. We are in 7 different states, but we're mainly in the great state of Pennsylvania. We do new build parking garages, and we love restoration. We hang our hat on that. To clarify something to some folks in the room, we're not associated with Walker Parking or Carl Walker Incorporated. Carl started his company 26 years ago as a response to a new build requirement, and we are proud to stay in business with his basic principles and ideals. So the challenges on this project, my goodness, you can only imagine. The garage was open during the entire time that we completed this project. When I believe Matt said that they gave us a couple chances to close the garage, that would be from 1 a.m. Sunday morning to 1 a.m. Monday morning. So thank you so much for that, for that great time. We were very productive in that. Working on the Helix, which was the only exit strategy out of the building. It was dead center in the middle of the building. It was really something. When you have a need for a restoration project, you need to establish a team. The owner has a facility in some state of delamination. The facility serves the public. It is an important function in the community to have these facilities and to maintain them. You have a specialized engineering firm who comes in and assesses the conditions, who listens to the owner's expectations, then develops a plan and a budget to meet those expectations. Then you have a contractor who absorbs and understands and can visualize those expectations, how to complete the project. Much like a sports team where you have the owner up in the owner's booth, and you have coaches on the sideline and up in the booth and booths calling the plays, and then you've got the guys on the field, and the guys on the field are executing the plays. It truly is a team. The goal being safety, the safety of the general public, and the safety of your workers that are out there executing the work. This is hard, dangerous work. And the work must be completed in the highest quality. What you're trying to do is you're trying to meet or exceed the expectations of the owner and the industry standards, which are very high in their own. Whenever you start a project like this, just imagine a raging river going across this room, and we're over here, us three, and we're ready to get in a boat, a little rowboat. And we're going to cross this river. We're going to get to the end of the project. Well, here we get all settled in the boat, and all of a sudden, who comes waddling along is the general public, the fourth person that's going to be in that boat. And let me tell you, folks, if anything's going to rock the boat, it's going to be how you deal and how you treat and how you complete the project with those people. And you all know who the general public is, right? You got older folks, and we're setting up barricades and drive lanes, and we're moving them every other 3 weeks. We're moving the whole parking scenario of how to get up and down through these garages. These are full height barricades, and so we have to change the signage almost on a weekly basis. You have younger folks that are walking around inside their car trying to Google on how to get out of the parking garage. You know, how do we get up to the third floor? How do we get to the roof? How do we get out of here? You got angry business folks that are pissed that they got to go to work, and they're pissed because they're not home fast enough. You know, you got people that are late for movies and shows. You got people that have medical appointments and medical needs, like people walking with walkers and stuff like that. They get lost and they end up on the 5th floor. They can't get out. Those are the challenges of this. Understanding their needs and dealing with their emotions and keeping people safe is the challenge on projects like this. The project, as Matt had stated, was completed over 2 full years. We had 30 individual mobilizations on the project. That means we would go in this room and we'd break this into 30 pieces. Each piece we were in and out in a week. We would put up the barricades, take them back down, move to the next one, complete the concrete work, get out of there, restripe it, open it back up, go to the next area. 3 or 4 months later, we go back down to that area, we block it off again, and we do waterproofing and steel applications and painting and electrical work and plumbing work. You know, it was really, truly a challenge. We did work all 3 shifts. We worked weekends. What would make sense for the contractor, dollar-wise, we would propose to the team. And we would throw it past them and see what they had to say. That's working together. We understood our cost, and we projected a plan to them for approval, and we worked together to get the job done. On the facade, Matt had mentioned the facade. It was truly a challenge, and it was a journey in itself. There was a local architect that did the original facade, and he kind of threw a curveball at everybody. He went to the mayor's office and complained enough that he got his way. We were all pushing for this modern facade, but each one of those panels that he had shown, and if you guys go down and run past that place, you'll see that each panel has a relief in it. Has like a middle piece and 4 corners that come down. So we had to do 1,000 panels that had exactly the same in dimension-wise, and we had to get them spray painted exactly the same. We were after we erected the things, we noticed there was some handprints on that, so we had to go back and touch it up. And I almost fell out of my shoes when I went down there the next day, because I'm looking at this thing and I'm going, oh my gosh, I hope this new paint blends in with the stuff that was painted in the shop. And thank goodness it did. Thank goodness it did. This project, we had 5,000 feet of full depth replacement. We had 4,000 feet of shallow repairs. We had 4,000 feet of overhead replacement. We had 1,000 square feet of beam repairs. These are huge numbers for a restoration project. Considering that some corner like this is maybe 8 square feet. Well, we had 1,000 feet of beam repairs. We had 300,000 feet of traffic bearing membrane. In complete honesty, we did put that down in 30 different modes. So that was a challenge. Little tiny pieces we worked through. almost 2 full winters to get that done. There was a lot of frustration because at times it got so cold that we couldn't do anything. We had to stop what we were doing until the ambient temperature came up so we could apply these products. Because you were not getting in there and heating the floor below to put deck coating above it. It was truly a challenge. We had done stairwell repairs in every single stairwell. During these applications, we had people breaking in, these old folks and these young kids going in and out of these stairwells. They'd take down the ribbon. They would open up. I don't even know how they got through these hard barriers. They'd open them up and walk down the stairwells. It was really something. We had people trying to live inside the building. It was in the middle of the downtown area. We had people trying to break in and steal our stuff. It was a challenge. We renovated the elevator landings. So if somebody wanted to get off on the 4th floor, we were closing the 4th floor exit on the elevators. So we had to communicate with the public on how to get downstairs. So it wasn't myself or Matt or Chris. It was one of our field foremen, and even sometimes a cement mason out of the hall or a laborer would have to be. We sat with them for hours and tried to explain to them to have sympathy and compassion for these people that are using the building while the building was in use. We placed a massive steel frame structure under a section of the garage for the PT system. It was compromised. We removed and replaced the electrical and plumbing system, and we worked on that beautiful facade. To accomplish all this, like I said, it takes a team. And honestly, we had a great team. Dan Honorado with the Parking Authority. Buzz, I got to mention some of these people. Buzz, who was the on-site project manager. Mary Ellen was the daytime manager. George was the nighttime manager. And this guy named Chris Holt. This guy over here. Truth be known, Chris and I are dear friends. We played high school against each other in the City League back in the day.
I bet he whooped you.
I think he got us 1 year. We got him the second year. But it's been an honor to call him a friend and to work with him over the years. Desman, who was arguably the finest, most effective repair company in this region. Matt Rapasky and Patrick Lyle and Danny Corrigan. And we believe that we accomplished our goals. And we're very proud of the fact that we did. This project won a national award. And it was delivered by the hard work of this team. These guys, the union labor from this local area, and we're real proud of it. Thank you.